Okay, so a couple things I forgot to mention. Coming off of the neck, the cervical region, you have what we call the cervical plexus. Coming off below that, kind of toward the arms, but still kind of arms, upper chest, is the brachial plexus. And down here, at the lumbar and sacral region, we've got the lumbosacral plexus. Now you might be going, okay, so what's a plexus? A plexus is basically a network. So you've got these spinal nerves coming off of the spinal cord, and then they merge. And then they split. But when they split, they're actually splitting, carrying pieces of each nerve that they merged with. It's almost like having a backup system, having a way to make sure that the nerves themselves are not just going to one place. Now you might say, okay, why is that important? Because think about it. If I have, let's say, C7 is in charge of bending my arm. And that's it. Nobody else does it. If I lose C7, I essentially lose the function of that arm. So if C7, 8, and 9 all are involved in bending my arm, and I lose C7, I have 8 and 9 to kind of compensate for that. It may not be as good as when all three were there, but I don't completely lose that function. It's like redundancy is built into the system. Now, we're going to see these plexus in a lot more detail in a little bit, but I just wanted to point them out to you so that you could actually see them on the big picture. Okay, so looking at the model, here are my vertebrae. See these yellow rubber things coming out? These are going to be the spinal nerves. Like I said, we don't name them based on where they're coming off the actual spinal cord. We name them based on where they're coming out in between the vertebrae. Now, with the model, one of the kind of limitations that we have is that there is no C1. So if you're counting on the model, you have to start at C2. Again, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 8, 12, and 5. So you've got C2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, T1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, L1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, another limitation with our model is the S nerves, so the cervical nerves. You still have, there's T12, L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5, but S1, 2, 3, and 4 are the only ones you see. S5 technically is kind of embedded in the bone, and so is C0. So you can't see those in the model, which is what this says, missing C1, S5, and C0, just so you're aware. Now, looking beyond just the spinal nerve, as these emerge, so here's my dorsal root, here's my ventral root, there's my dorsal root ganglion, here's my spinal nerve. As they get past that, we dub them ramus, okay? And we've basically got three directions that they can go. They can go up toward the front of the body, they can go back toward the back of the body, or they can go in to the chest cavity of the body. So we've got three branches that are possible, okay? The dorsal ramus, coming back here. Really and truly, if you think about where your spinal cord is and what's behind it, there's not much back there. So this would be controlling the back muscles. It would be bringing in sensations from the midline of your back. Again, think about location. That spinal cord is right dead center in the middle. If I have a branch going backwards, there's not much there, okay? Now, coming forward around the rib cage in this case, because you can see the shape of the rib there, is the ventral ramus. Now, the ventral ramus is going to control quite a bit more. It's going to control the sensations from the front, the ventral portion of your skin, whether that's your chest or your abdomen, those areas. It's also going to control all of the muscles there. So your pectoralis, your abdominal muscles, your yeah, those ones that I'm not remembering right now. Now, the third branch, remember I said it can go forward, it can go back, or it can go in to your chest cavity. See this little branch right here that is connecting to these guys? These are the communicating ramus, okay? Or rami if you want multiple, more than one, okay? So these are the ones that are involved in your sympathetic nervous system, in your fight or flight nervous system. They're the ones that cause your heart to speed up and your breathing to become more deep when you are, let's say, facing a cougar out in the parking lot. You can also see that I've got, remember this big bulge here is a ganglion. Here you can see that we've got the same type of big bulging shape. These are the ganglion of the sympathetic chain. Remember I said it's sympathetic nervous system, so that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I want you to know off of this figure. So remember what I said about the plexus and the networks. So here's the cervical plexus. Here I have C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. Now, notice that when C3 comes out, it branches in a lot of different directions, right? But you'll notice that C3 actually comes down and merges with C4. C2 comes down, comes back up, and actually merges up here with C1. And then there's a branch of this combo coming off here. That's a plexus. Like I said, we've got kind of this merging and splitting and merging and splitting. That allows us to build that redundancy that I was talking about into every nerve that is going to a different place. I don't want one nerve in charge of everything. I want multiple nerves in charge of those things so that hopefully I don't end up with just, one nerve goes and it stops working altogether. So we have the great auricular nerve. We've got the transverse cervical nerve. That bucket handle that you see right there, that's called the ansa cervicalis. Then coming off of C4, we've got the supraclavicular nerves. And this right here is called the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve is actually in charge of your diaphragm and how your diaphragm works. Now, scooting below that, hello, why are you not working? There. We have the brachial plexus. Now remember, brachial means arm, okay? So C5, 6, 7, 8, and T1, that's going to be what is going to make up the brachial plexus. And again, you see the merge and split and merge and split. That's that plexus formation I was talking about. You actually have 5 primary nerves that are going to come off of the brachial plexus to help with the control of your arm and your shoulder. The axillary nerve, the radial nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, the median nerve, and the ulnar nerve. So, looking here, there's that axillary nerve, okay? It actually goes posteriorly toward the armpit. You've got the radial nerve, that is on the side of the radius. You have the musculocutaneous nerve. You've got, where is it? The ulnar nerve, the median nerve, which it makes sense. It's right down the center of your forearm, okay? So the axillary nerve, again, the axillary nerve, like I said, it goes posteriorly. Movement-wise, this is going to laterally rotate your arm, so out, okay? It's also going to abduct the arm. So remember, abduct means to take away, so abduct the arm. Sensory-wise, It's this part of your arm. Something you have to learn about, or something that you have to understand, I should say, about spinal nerves is they're a mixture. They're not just motor or sensory. They're actually always both. And if you think about it, the fact that you've got that merge into the spinal nerve actually does make sense. I didn't mention this before, but the posterior root is always sensory. The anterior root is always motor, meaning it controls the movement of some muscle. So having both on all of these does make sense. And by the way, this information is coming straight from your book. It's not like I just got it out of nowhere. Even the figures are from your book, except for one, I think. Okay, so the radial nerve. Again, this is coming down toward the side of your radius. It extends the elbow, flexes the elbow, extends and abducts the wrist. So if I'm in anatomical position, this is going to abduct, take away from my body, okay? It supinates the forearm and the hand. Remember, supination is palm up. It extends the fingers, it extends and adducts the wrist. So extend, adduct means to bring toward the body. Again, if we're in anatomical position with our arms out to the side, this would be bringing it toward my body. It abducts the thumb, so brings the thumb out, and it extends the thumb. So not only does it take it away from the body, but it extends it as well. Sensory-wise, this is going to be the posterior surface of your arm as well as your forearm. Remember, this is as if I'm standing in anatomical position. So posterior would be back here and back here, okay? The lateral 2/3 of the dorsum of the hand. So if I'm standing in anatomical position, lateral would be the side with my thumb. Dorsum would be the back. So this area, okay? This is the palm of my hand. It would be this area back here, okay? The musculocutaneous nerve. Okay, it flexes the shoulder, it flexes the elbow and supinates the forearm and the hand, and it flexes the elbow. Notice, these do that too, right? Remember I talked about the merging and splitting for the plexus. Having backups is always going to be important. As far as sensory though, this is the lateral surface of the forearm. So if I'm standing in anatomical position here, okay, because this is lateral, this is to the side. So the side where my thumb is. The ulnar nerve goes right next to the ulna. It flexes and adducts the wrist. It flexes the fingers, adducts the thumb, so it brings the thumb closer to your hand. It controls the hyperthenar muscles. Remember that the hyperthenar muscles are the ones that are right here in the meat of your thumb. It flexes the metacarpal phalangeal joints and extends the interphalangeal joints. So here are my metacarpals, here are my phalanges. That joint right there is going to be the metacarpal phalangeal joint. Now, it flexes, so that motion, but it extends the interphalangeal joint. So it extends your fingers, but it bends this way at that metacarpal phalangeal joint. It abducts and adducts the fingers, in, out. Sensory-wise, in this case, it's the medial third of the hand, the little finger, and the medial half of the ring finger. So the other one, it was out here where your thumb is, if we're standing in anatomical position. In this case, it's this side. It's toward your pinky, okay? So both the front and the back of your hand. The median nerve, that one that runs dead center in the middle. It pronates the forearm and the hand. So instead of supination, palm up, now we're talking about pronation, palm down. It flexes and abducts the wrist. It flexes the wrist. It flexes the fingers. It controls the thumb muscle, controls the thenar muscles. It flexes the metacarpal phalangeal joints and extends the interphalangeal joints. I think I said something wrong here. I know I said something wrong. Where is it? hypothenar muscles. This would be this area here below the pinky, not the area with the thumb, okay? So the muscles here, not here. The thenar muscles are the ones with the thumb. And it flexes the metacarpal phalangeal joints and extends the interphalangeal joints. So again, except for the pronation of the hand, you're seeing a lot of the same functions repeated. Backups. Now, as far as sensory goes for the median nerve, this is the lateral 2/3 of the palm of the hand, the thumb, the index finger, middle fingers, the lateral half of the ring finger, and the dorsal tips of the same fingers. So instead of the back of the hand, you've got the palm of the hand now, and the dorsal tips, so your nails, where your nails are. So the lumbosacral plexus, again, you've got a whole ton of different nerves here. The lumbar plexus, you've got the ventral rami of L1 to L4. The sacral, we're talking about, again, those ventral branches of L4 to S4. Like I said, they're usually considered as the same, the lumbosacral plexus. You've got 4 major nerves that exit and enter that lower limb. The obturator, the femoral, the tibial, and the common fibular, which can also be called the peroneal. Remember I said we've always got multiple names for the same thing? So if you see peroneal, that's just fibular. It's the same thing. Okay, so looking at it again, you've got the femoral, you've got the obturator, you've got the anterior femoral cutaneous, and I said that there were other branches. You've got the iliohypogastric, the ilioinguinal as well. So the obturator, it rotates your thigh laterally. So you've got that internal rotation of your thigh. It adducts the thigh, so it brings your thighs together, and it adducts and flexes, it adducts the thigh and it flexes your knee, so bending your knee. As far as sensory, it's basically the middle of your thigh, okay? The internal medial surface of your thigh. The femoral, it flexes the hip, so it brings your leg up. It flexes the knee as well. It can extend the knee. So again, extends the knee, flexes the hip. This is a large sensory region. So you've got the anterior and lateral branches that are actually supplying the anterior and the lateral thighs, so the front and the side of your thigh. And the saphenous branch is actually going to supply the medial, the middle leg, the bottom part where we call it a calf, and the foot, okay? Now, the tibial and common fibular nerve. Most of the time, people refer to the branch that they're coming out of the actual plexus as the sciatic nerve, because they are merged together, just like what we talked about with the plexus merging and splitting and merging and splitting. So that sciatic nerve is actually these two nerves merged together. This is the only picture I believe that I took off of the web because they didn't have a really good picture in your book. So the tibial nerve up here, it extends your hip and flexes your knee. It extends the hip and adducts the thigh, brings your thighs together. It plantar flexes the foot. It points your toes. It flexes the knee, bends your knee, and it flexes your toes. It bends your toes. Now, with the tibial nerve itself, there is no sensory information in this, okay? Now, the plantar nerves, okay, they flex and adduct the toes, and they control the plantar muscles of the foot. Sensory-wise, this is actually going to give you sensation from the sole or the bottom of your foot. The sural nerves. As far as controlling muscles, sural doesn't do anything, but it does have sensory information. The lateral and posterior 1/3 of your leg and the lateral side of your foot, so where your pinky toe is. So you might be saying, why are we learning plantar and sural? Those weren't the main. These are actually branches coming off of the tibial nerve. So they're alternate branches coming off of the tibial nerve. Even though the tibial nerve itself has no sensation, the branches continue to provide sensory information for the sole of the foot and the lateral posterior 1/3 of your leg and the lateral side of your foot. Okay, so the common fibular, like I said, peroneal is another name for that. It extends your hip and flexes your knee with the biceps femoris. Sensory-wise, it's the outside of your knee, so the lateral surface of your knee. Let's see, the deep fibular, which is down here. I'm sorry, I didn't even point it out. Fibular. Here's the deep fibular. This actually dorsiflexes the foot and extends the toes. So remember, dorsal means the back, right? And with sharks, the back is the top. As they're swimming, their dorsal fin is up here. So dorsiflex means that I'm bringing my toes up toward my knee, okay? I'm basically bending them back. And when I do that, I extend my toes out, okay? So as far as sensory, now we're talking about the great and the second toes, so your big toe and the next toe over. You get sensory information from the deep fibular from that. Excuse me, the superficial fibular, which is over here. Again, peroneal nerve. This plantar flexes, point your toes, and everts your foot. Remember, inversion is bringing the soles of your foot together. Eversion is moving the soles of your foot out to the sides. Sensory-wise, this is the dorsal anterior third of the leg. So not only do you have the top of the foot, but you've got, so the dorsum of the foot, the top. You've got the front here, the side, and then the back over here of the leg or the calf. And if you want to know the rest of the nerves and what they do, here you go. So yeah, you need to know the nerves on these pictures. And like I said, they didn't come from nowhere. This as well, and these over here, okay? Those are the figures that I'm going to expect you to know.